Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 2017 Northern California Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame induction ceremony. At this time, please welcome your Master of Ceremonies for the evening, Donovan Troy.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the 2017 Northern California Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame. Tonight, in this very fine building, the Gold Mine, presented by Gold Rush Pro Wrestling, we celebrate the men that have paved the way for Northern California pro wrestlers, referees, managers, valets, bookers, promoters, and promotions to thrive in the golden state of California. These men have put in miles and miles, sacrificed all of their lives to bring entertainment to you, the masses of Northern California. And tonight, here, we pay tribute to those gentlemen that have allowed live pro wrestling to entertain each and every one of you. Ladies and gentlemen, at this time, please welcome Northern California Pro Wrestling Hall of Famer. He is Diamond Jim Davis.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for coming out tonight. It gives me great honor to induct a man that I have followed since the 60s, actually the late 50s, 60s, 70s. He was part of the leading voice for professional wrestling in the Bay Area. Also, he was the voice of roller derby, if you remember that sport. He's 96 years old. He is a master of announcing. First, he came to the Bay Area in 1949, starting his career at the radio station KFRC. Over the years at KFRC, he did many jobs. Later on, he was approached by a gentleman that owned KFRC and wanted to start a TV station. That was KTVU Channel 2 in San Francisco. He started roller derby in 1958 announcing. He did many matches on TV at the Cow Palace. The Cow Palace was running shows in the early 60s. Roy Shires was the promoter. Roy approached Walt Harris because of his outstanding achievements in roller derby. Roller derby is now seen in 123 markets around the country. So that put his face out there. He also was instrumental in the San Francisco Giants. He was the first announcer, 1958, for the San Francisco Giants when they first moved from New York to San Francisco. He was there later on as a producer of the Giants. Many times he'd be on the road with the Giants, with their announcers, Rush Hodges and Lon Simmons, who became mainstays for the San Francisco Giants over the years. They would go into, say, Cincinnati. They would pull up in the bus. He'd be on the bus with Willie McCovey, all the biggies from the San Francisco Giants. He would go down in the back where the entrance is, where all the fans are all around waiting to see their favorite stars come in. He'd be walking down with Russ Hodges, Lon Simmons, and the Giants. Do you think that the people would come up to him and say, hey, Willie McCovey, can I have your autograph? Or, hey, Orlando Cepeda, can I have your autograph? No, they would come up to Walt Harris because all around the country, people saw roller derby and the wrestling show, which was promoted and syndicated throughout the country. His face was more famous than most of the baseball players around. He worked at KTVU Studios in Oakland. He did wrestling in the evening. He did the TV show in the morning for the news at 6:30 in the morning. One of his routines was he'd go do the news 6:30 in the morning. He would drive up to Sacramento. He would do wrestling up there, and then he would drive down to Modesto and do roller derby. So he was traveling all around the area at the time. No matter where he went, he was very well recognized. One of the main things that the wrestlers liked about him, he could really put them over. And I think nowadays, everybody knows like Vince McMahon, all the different announcers, Greg Monsoon, Lance Russell, Gordon Soley, just to name a few. Those are some of the favorites. He was even before them. He would tell the wrestlers to calm down. He made the people at home feel like they were part of the family. The heels, which, if you know any of the terminology, are the bad guys, used to come up to him and intimidate him, try to almost knock him down, punch him. But he was so resilient, he would push him off with his words, not with his physically. And they really liked that. They really enjoyed him because he could do that and make them feel really good and get them over, which was the part of the announcer job, is get the people over, which means to make them look really good. So they really, really appreciate it. He did all-star wrestling, big-time wrestling. He would do it all around Northern California. And like I said, he was syndicated all around the country for years. It gives me a really great pleasure to induct him. He's told me over the years some of the stories. He would drive so much, he was saying, that he never got a ticket. He did tens of 20,000, 30,000 miles a year. He would be on the road, going all around the country. He said he never got stopped. Actually, he said he got stopped 2 times in his career. 40 years in broadcasting. 40 years. 2 times. So one time the policeman pulled him over and recognized him and then started a conversation asking him about, well, who's going to win tonight, the wrestling match coming up in Sacramento? Who's going to win? Who's going to be there tonight? So he never got the ticket from that officer. Another time he got stopped, he told me that he was going to the Capitol to see the governor of California. He was invited to go there. And he told the police officer, I'm going to the Capitol because I was invited by the governor to come up and talk. And the police officer didn't believe him. At the time, it had state police. I don't know if you remember, that was probably before your time. We used to have state police, not only the highway patrol. And they're the ones that had to call up to the Capitol and found out, oh, yes, indeed, he was coming to the Capitol to talk. So he let him go after he got an autograph picture signed, talking about the stories, what's going to happen, who's going to be at the roller derby, who's going to be at the wrestling. So Walt was instrumental in bringing the action, the assignment of putting the players over, not only in wrestling, but in roller derby. I would like to say it gives me great pleasure to introduce to you and induct this gentleman. I called him today. He's 96 years old, like I said. He doesn't get out that often. So we're trying to get him up here today. So I don't know if he's on his way or what, but if he does show up, please come up and thank him, because most of you probably would not be watching wrestling without him to be there to start all this. And people like me appreciate it. Donovan, we all appreciate it. He really was the founding godfather for Bay Area wrestling and roller derby. This is a picture of Walt back in KTVU studios. Thank you very much. I'll pass your thanks on to Walt next time I talk to him. Receiving the award tonight for Walt Harris is Mike Lano. Mike?
Hey everybody, this is the best of course, Jim Davis and myself, difficult. But if you want to think about this, at the same time every week he was doing wrestling commentary, roller derby, where he was also flying all across the country in Japan and Hawaii for promoter Jerry Seltzer, boxing and demolition derby every week. And then sometimes he was sitting in the Channel 2. If you know Channel 2, it's our biggest independent. He was sitting in the news anchor chair, sometimes the sports anchor chair. Really phenomenal. And I'll end with last night, a famous world big-time comic actor, Brian Copeland of Channel 7 KGO here, KGO Radio. He's on every day, as I was just telling Dave Meltzer backstage. He was doing an autobiographical one-man show, and he was talking about growing up in San Leandro in 1970. And he played, and even referenced it. He said, "This is Walt Harris, Channel 2 wrestling and roller derby announcer, doing roller derby commentary," and they played audio from it. So that was a really huge deal. So we'll make sure Walt doesn't make it tonight, and the mic's going out, that Walt gets this. But Walt also, and I'll leave you with, I believe, Dave can correct me, that Walt is the oldest living pro wrestling announcer, just looking at the wrestling aspect, maybe derby too, on earth, that was there in the glory days. So Walt Harris, this is for you. You were Mr. Bay Area Wrestling.
Ladies and gentlemen, at this time, we have some Superstar Awards to give out. Please welcome their presenters, the axe murderer Bobby Hart and wrestling personified Rick Luxury.
All right, we added some new awards this year. 7 years ago, this is great to see, by the way, 7 years ago, Bobby and myself decided that NorCal needs something a little bit bigger to pave the way for all of us. And we came up with the NorCal Hall of Fame, and this thing has grown, and it's just great to see each and every one of you out here tonight representing the people that paved the way for all of us. The first award for the wrestlers of this year goes to the Referee of the Year. This guy has refereed for every major promotion here in the state of California, and this year really showed his stripes. The Referee of the Year award goes to Alex Goggles Goldstein. Now, Goggles can't be here tonight because he got on a plane and flew over to Oregon to referee for television up there, so we'll make sure that Goggles gets this award.
This next award is NorCal Promotion of the Year. The promotion that was picked has taken pro wrestling to a new level in NorCal by taking this promotion to the Cal Palace and the Stockton Civic Center. Pro Wrestling Bushido. I mean, pro
Just kidding.
Marcus has taken a man's dream and put it where it needed to go. You took Roland Alexander's love and you put it where he wanted to put it, and you took it to different extremes, man. All Pro Wrestling is Promotion of the Year.
NorCal Promotion. Can we get some life in this? There we go. The NorCal Promotion of the Year, All Pro Wrestling. From the bottom of my heart, I would like to thank everybody who put on a pair of boots, who put on their tights, that busted their ass to be a part of making something special this year. We can say that we deserved it this year. That's for damn sure. I'd like to also thank all the promotions throughout Northern California who have really bonded together to make things special. I'd like to thank my wife, Ashley. She's the backbone behind this. She's the one who puts up with more shit than anybody I know. My kids as well. Like I said, I'd like to thank all of the other promotions: Pro Wrestling Bushido, Gold Rush Pro Wrestling, PCW, Pro Wrestling Revolution. This award, it says All Pro Wrestling, but we, together, all of these promotions, we are All Pro Wrestling. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, for our next inductee, he knows all about championship. He is one of the only managers to manage all pro wrestling worldwide internet champion. He's managed an APW Universal Heavyweight Champion. And just recently, he was able to get the trifecta and manage APW Tag Team Champions. Please welcome to this stage, he is the manager of the new Guerrilla Armada. He is Caesar Black.
How's everybody doing tonight? If I could try shooting for gym wars. So I was out there feeling is everywhere, and I don't remember exactly who it was, but somebody was on the right of me, and the right, my eye went right, and then straight at me, I saw a red boot. My cap reflexed as I moved. I clutched the camera and I got a picture of Chicano Flame's boot. And my introduction to Chicano Flame. Fast forward a few years, we started Fox. I had developed a friendship with Chicano and my personal love of Lucha Libre, and the necessity to have Lucha in San Francisco's business district made having Flame a priority. He is and was my go-between between the luchadors and myself. And yeah, I appreciate that. Picture of him smiling at my daughter when she's like 6 weeks old at Fox City, and I still adore that picture. Through Fox City, as a community, we did some cool things and exposed that to entertainment they would have never seen before. We partnered on one of the 6 a.m. It's small like from just having hands and a DJ versus wrestling, Chicano Flame, and 7 of crazy shows, drinks agaves every single mile. They say the best ability is availability, and Chicano Flame is always ready. Except when he's cruising around the ocean on vacation, and he likes the vacation. We shot some amazing podcasts before podcast was a thing. One time we went to the Mission. Chicano Flame, full costume, red Mustang, top down, people stopping and looking, amazing. And we taught the city about Lucha Libre. We taught San Francisco about Lucha Libre, and we made it hot. I'm gonna end it with this. Chicano Flame, from the moment he enters the locker room, he's dressed to the nines, he's smiling, he's ready. He exemplifies what the business is. The way he does it the way the Santo, Blue Demon, and Dr. Wagner do it. He's a leader, a guy to be respected. And truthfully, when I said I wanted to induct him, I was kind of half joking, because I'm sure somebody out there knows him better. And he said yes. I was like, damn, okay. Here we go. So from the bottom of my heart, let me be the first person to introduce Chicano Flame into the NorCal Hall of Fame.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Hey, first of all, I'd like to thank all of you guys for coming out here, taking your time to coming out here to the Hall of Fame. Or I like to call it the Hall of Flame. First off, I'd like to thank my family out there somewhere, my mom, my sister, my daughter's here. I'd like to thank my firefighting family too. They've been very supportive in this journey of professional wrestling. My brothers and sisters from the ring, from the wrestling family that I have here. First off, I'd like to say, growing up in San Francisco in the early 70s, I was born in Mexico in '68, moved to San Francisco in the early 70s. I remember watching wrestling with my grandfather down in the Mission. It was always great to sit down next to him on the floor while he was watching wrestling, yelling at the TV, telling those guys to move, to watch out. It was great. Later on, my uncle used to take us to the Cow Palace back in the Roy Shire promotions, and that's where I got bit by the bug, as Roland used to say it. Either you love wrestling or you hate it. There's something about wrestling that if you love it, it brings you in. And for me, it was everything. I just enjoyed wrestling. Later on in the summers, we used to go down to Mexico, and there I would look at all these wrestling magazines and the colors of the mask and all the characters there. They were real life superheroes to me that I kind of looked up to. I remember as a teenager, I would spend hours at the local drugstores down in the Mission, just looking at all the magazines that they published every month out there, reading about the guys in the East Coast. Because back then you had no idea of who was wrestling back in the East Coast. You just had your promotion here in the Bay Area, and that's all you had. You didn't have the TV like it is now. Anyway, I remember always wanting a mask out there, always asking my mom and dad to buy me a mask. I remember when I first got my first mask, I used to put it on my sister, and I must have beat her maybe 1,000 times for a mask every night when my mom and dad wasn't home. Put a towel on her back and put the mask on. We would wrestle, and always at the end I would win that mask from her. And it would always be my sister under that mask. Anyway, back in 1995, watching the television, the local wrestling channel, or the wrestling show in the evenings, there popped up a commercial. If you got what it takes to be a professional wrestler, come to APW. Pacific Coast Sports is where you want to be. And ever since I saw that that commercial, a little light bulb went off in my head, and that's what I wanted to do. So I went down there to APW, took a look. Matt Heisen down there, I always thought I'd be too small to wrestle. Back then, I must have weighed maybe 170 pounds. Not as heavy as I am now. Always wanted to be heavier. Now I wish I wasn't that heavy. Out there and seeing Matt Heisen, and this guy was smaller than I was, I believe. So that was one of my motivations to stick into wrestling. If this little guy could do it, I could do it also as well. I want to give thanks to Roland Alexander for making that dream come true for myself, but for many of the rest of the guys out here in the wrestling promotions. That if it wasn't for Roland and his dream of opening APW, I don't think we would have been here today. So Roland up there, thank you very much, Roland. I think my journey being lasted so long goes to the fact that back then we have not that we don't have now, but back then we had some good trainers: Mike Modest, Robert Thompson, Mike Diamond, Matt Heisen, like I mentioned earlier. Those guys, they gave us the fundamentals to make us last and to take good bumps and to protect ourselves and last a long time in this business. My journey through wrestling hasn't come that easy. I've had some injuries, you know, that have kind of led to some depressions. I remember back in the 90s, a lot of these guys went to Japan. Modest and Donovan Morgan. I think Jardy went out there too. And I was sitting at home with the busted Achilles tendon, you know, kind of feeling sorry for having these injuries on the soccer field. I was a big fan of soccer. I still am. But anyway, through those hard times there, kind of depressions, one thing leads to another. I kind of got down on myself. I kind of started abusing drugs a little bit, kind of feeling sorry for myself. With the love of wrestling, I made a comeback. I went back to APW. I talked to Roland. I told him what my problem was. By that time, I had been clean and sober for over 6 months or so. Ended up being clean and sober for 8 months, for 8 years. Roland welcomed me back in with open arms. So thank you, Roland, for welcoming me back. The love of wrestling for me, it's always been about the mask. I remember that when I came back to Roland, he wanted to give me a different gimmick. He wanted to get me into like a Mexican mafia and take the mask off. He said he would give me he would put and give me some good billings and stuff. But to me, for myself, wrestling was always about the mask and stuff. So yeah, I turned Roland down on that. I told him that's okay if you don't give me a push, that's fine. But for me, the mask is what brought me to wrestling, and I would rather keep it and and see where it goes from there. I don't know what would have happened if I would have took the mask off and maybe followed Roland's advice of doing that gimmick. But anyway, I'm here now, being honored into the Hall of Fame. Here's a quick little road story I'd like to tell you guys. Back in maybe the late 90s, there was a group of us, Boom Boom Kamini, Bison Smith, myself, and about 3 other guys, named Jardy France. We all drove down to San Diego to wrestle out there for a Saturday night or a Friday night down at the Marines Center down there in San Diego. On the way back, we left maybe about 6 in the morning, drove a couple hours. We stopped off at this all-you-can-eat breakfast up at the top of the Grapevine. So here we are in the morning, all hella hungry from the night before. We stop off, we all pile inside this restaurant, and here it is, the buffet, all you can eat. So those guys went to town. We must have wiped out everything that was in the counter there. That the waitress had to run back to the kitchen to tell the chefs to start cooking some more food. And it was funny to see the reaction of the chefs. Maybe all 4 or 6 of them come out to look at us to see who ate all the food that they had cooked. And that was a funny moment. Anyway, I know through my careers I haven't won so many titles, but sometimes I don't need titles to be a champion. I feel honored to be here. We make a lot of sacrifices. I know in this business we're always out in the weekend. It's always the late weekends, and I'd just like to thank my family for sticking with me through all these sacrifices that we've made. I just want to say I love wrestling. I still do as a kid. I really enjoy it. It's been a dream come true for me, even now more than not being here, receiving this award. Being at the Cow Palace was maybe a full circle for me, being a kid in the stands to being under the lights and getting my hand raised there in the Cow Palace. That was a great feeling for myself, a great full circle of this business here. So I'd like to thank every one of you guys for coming out here for professional wrestling, independent. Also like to thank everyone else besides the wrestlers. There's a lot of us in the back, the referees, the cameraman, the sound people, the promoters. They need to be thanked also for putting on our shows here that we do. It's not just about the wrestlers, but it's a whole team effort of everyone involved that makes this thing happen. So thank you very much for this night.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome back for our awards, Mr. Bobby Hart and Mr. Rick Luxury.
All right, so Bobby's not much of a talker, so I'll be the one talking a lot. He's just going to hand off the piece of paper. The next award we have goes out to the NorCal Breakout Star of the Year. This individual is a bit of a shocker to most, not being in the business very long, but really taking their career as far as they possibly can at this moment. This award goes to an individual that has wrestled all over the world so far, making tours to the UK, as well as working here in the Western and Eastern Hemisphere of the United States. We just found out that this individual will be making her debut at Corrigan Hall in Tokyo, Japan. The Breakout Star for 2017 goes to Shotzi Blackheart. Now, Shotzi's making a name for herself right now, so she can't be here with us small-timers, but we'll make sure she gets this award. The next award goes out to the NorCal Tag Team of the Year. Now, this award had a lot of nominees, actually. Multiple tag teams winning multiple championships for multiple companies. But one team stood out more than any other. This tag team showcased their talents not once but twice at the Cow Palace, going in and out as champions. This award goes to the tag team that is most deserving for the name Tag Team Wrestling, because this team is 21st century old school. This tag team, once again, award Levi Shapiro, the Royal, the Classic Connection.
Oh, man, I get 2 pieces of paper this time. All right, I'll keep it short and sweet. Buddy sends his thanks. He wishes he can be up here. Long loop. He likes to stay home and get a little rest. I don't blame him. Tag team wrestling. It's what I love. Starting out, I didn't have a tag team wrestler. Singles. But through the great tag team wrestling of not only Northern California, but all over the world, Northern California had some of the best. Ray Stevens, Pat Patterson, more than I can keep in stock. Even more modern, you have the Reno Scum and Suburban Commandos, which are 2 of the top teams for us, and we're so happy that we're on the upper echelon. And just like Rick said, over the past year or 2, I have seen tremendous amount of tag team wrestling coming out, especially NorCal, and we're happy that we're at the top, but we hope that next year we have some competition. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, our next inductor, he himself is a Northern California Hall of Famer, photographer. He is Dr. Mike Lano.
Effed up, Mike. Before I start, I just want to really quickly say that Roland could never have dreamed of going into the Cow Palace. He started everything with All Pro Wrestling. A lot of us were there, watched him from the start. And Sparky, with this gym taking over the boot camp, and this is a showplace for world-class wrestling, just phenomenal job. Let's give a big hand to Sparky. And Marcus Mack has done so much. Who would have ever thought that he could have done 1, let alone 2 shows at the Cow Palace? Roland would have dreamed of that, but never would have been crazy enough to try it, and Marcus has done so phenomenally well. He was Roland's booker for years and years, done an amazing job. It's almost like the original UWF in the 80s, as Dave Meltzer probably say, where Gabe Ramirez, so many people, Ramirez, I mean, nobody is a hype man like Gabe to get his promotion going, and everybody that came out of All Pro Wrestling went on to just amazing stuff. So if you only know our, and I want to thank the Hall of Fame people, they work hard all year to put this together. I think this has got to be a record crowd. Last year was big, this year's huge. But if you only know our honoree for his obituary tributes, you really, I mean, everybody here should be getting the Observer, the Wrestling Observer newsletter. Everybody should be listening to all those shows and podcasts that he does with his partner Brian Alvarez and so many other talented people. But the piece that he did recently on Minami Toyota just a couple of weeks ago, she just retired. Dave did this exhaustive, the definitive piece on her, which is why everybody keeps and saves their Wrestling Observers. For example, Jim Davis, who came out here early. I just brought this, the most current issue, but Jim Davis brought, it may be one of Dave's earliest yearbooks. And it's just a phenomenal, I mean, you see this stuff on eBay. People resell it for lots and lots of big money. So let me get on with this quickly because I want Dave to do most all the talking. He's obviously the pioneer of journalism, of ethical reporting in pro wrestling. Nobody does it. No one even comes close to Dave Meltzer as an actual journalist reporter. From his earliest 70s days when he was actually putting out his own newsletter, around 1971, California Wrestling Report, with people I contributed with George Beppu from Honolulu. So Dave would cover, and nobody has covered from when he started watching wrestling in 1970, Bay Area wrestling like Dave. Nobody covers global wrestling. And how many people in wrestling did he turn on to MMA? I think he's like at the forefront of that when it was just getting going, when Joe Hand was putting on those UWF-1 Takata pay-per-views. Dave was right there at the beginning and is Mr. MMA as well. And I don't think anybody is as well known in the industry other than maybe Vince Jr. In the 80s, for example, and 90s, particularly in the early 90s, around 92, 93, when the steroid and ring boy stuff started happening, and then the Fed trial. Dave went back there. So if Dave I mean, that's what a real reporter does, like somebody from NBC, etc. When stuff was happening, Dave was there every day reporting on that Vince trial, which is pretty major. We went together. I was there January 91 for most of that month. Dave said, let's go back. We got to go back. March 91, the very first Dome show, New Japan versus WCW, NWA, Flair Fujinami. And so we went back. He went back, I think, the following year to all of the Japanese women's groups put on this Wrestle Marinpiad at the Tokyo Egg Dome. I think it was fairly close to sold out. Dave was there. And I've even heard rumors Dave is going to Wrestle Kingdom January 4th. I don't know if that's true. I didn't ask him yet. January 4th for a huge, huge card. So when stuff happens, Dave is at the forefront. His Wrestling Observer newsletter went online. It was probably one of the earliest things to go online. It's huge, but it's evolved into this global brand with radio shows, podcasts. Everything is at Wrestling Observer. .com, etc. And I just remember Dave's loving parents, who, as he said, they were always supportive. His dad would go on business trips, and Dave got to actually go see wrestling in Florida. Everybody dreamed of seeing Eddie Graham 70s shows. Dave got to do it. And then when he went to school, he went to the Dallas-Fort Worth area when World Class was at its peak, the Fritz von Erich promotion. He got to see all that stuff in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Just amazing. I don't know how Dave does it, because if you look at all the wrestling TV, good and bad, and I don't know how even the ancillary stuff, how you can sit through Total Bellas, Dave has to do that. Sits through, I mean, all the MMA, which is great to watch, boxing, all this stuff, and I don't know, how he sleeps or has time, because it's pretty well known in wrestling that he's a great husband, a great father. I hope his son will someday carry on that tradition. But right now, Brian Alvarez is doing a terrific job. And one of the people who was instrumental to Dave is like the most ethical guy, just like Dave is. He transcends wrestling reporting to all of sports, etc. reporting. Frank DeFord. And Frank DeFord, one of the premier Sports Illustrated writer-reporters for many decades, was like on the first HBO Real Sports with Brian Gumbel until he passed away. And this gentleman thought so highly of Dave when he started a daily newspaper. No one had tried to do that. Just on sports alone, the Sports Daily National, who did he pick to do a regular column? Dave Meltzer, through the whole life of that newspaper. There's really little more that I can say. I think all of you guys know who Dave Meltzer is. We're so lucky to have him in the San Francisco Bay Area, San Jose, Campbell, actually. Nobody covers wrestling. Nobody ever will, or MMA or boxing. Let's give our award to the one and only incredible Mr. Wrestling Observer Newsletter himself, Dave Meltzer.
Is this working? All right, cool. Thank you guys very much. It's great to be here. And I don't really want to talk too much about myself, because I'm actually more in the mood to talk about what we're really here for, which is like the history of pro wrestling. And in Northern California, we're really lucky. I think a lot of people know this, and some of you may not, that this area was really, as far as like history and everything like that, is really strong with pro wrestling. Strangler Lewis used to live in San Jose. Luthez used to love to come here. When in the 50s, when Luthez wrestled Leon Amelini at the Cow Palace, those were the biggest wrestling events anywhere in the country, pretty much almost in the world at the time. And this tremendous storyline that they put together, where Leon Amelini was the star football player for the 49ers, and he's one of the greatest linemen in the history of the game. And he was also a very good professional. He was the star professional wrestler in the area. Luthez was the world champion. And they would do matches where he would come in, and if Luthez, if Leon Amelini, you said if he won the championship, he put over wrestling so strong that he would retire from football. And he was like, like the equivalent of Lawrence Taylor or someone like that, every bit. And so they would pack the Cow Palace with matches like that. And in one of the matches, Leon Amelini won by disqualification. And for those of you who get tired of this thing, and I know I do when I watch professional wrestling, the cheap title doesn't change hands on disqualification. It actually comes from that match because Leon Amelini won the match on disqualification, and there was this big dispute, and it went all over the country, who were the champion, and finally the NWA ruled that the title could not change hands on a DQ, so that comes from a match at the Cow Palace. Of course, I think a lot of you know about the 1960s when the Cow Palace was the hotbed of professional wrestling in the United States, when Roy Shires brought in Ray Stevens, and of course Ray Stevens and Pat Patterson, one of the greatest tag teams of all time. And those of us who grew up, I came a little bit after the 60s, but we got, one of the things that I learned by traveling all over the country from that era is we were really lucky, because if you saw like the wrestling in other parts of the country, there were guys who were great everywhere, but up and down the show, when you had Ray Stevens, Pat Patterson, Rocky Johnson, Peter Maivia, Red Bastien, these guys were the cream of the crop of professional wrestlers. Superstar Billy Graham got his first big break with Roy Shires, became one of the biggest stars of that era. And Roy Shires, of course, he had his ups and downs, but it was a tremendous era for pro wrestling. And then, Ray Stevens, Pepper Gomez had the biggest crowd in the history of the Cow Palace. And then, the modern era came with Vince McMahon and everything. And San Francisco, San Jose was one of the first places after Los Angeles that Vince McMahon went national in. What's going on? Okay. So, it continued throughout, that era. And so anyway, I just wanted to let everyone know how much I appreciate being able to grow up around here and see the quality of wrestling that we saw here. And I do want to mention Roland, because a lot of people mentioned Roland Alexander. I was like a little kid when I first met Roland. He was a couple of years older than me. And, he was always a, nice guy, knew a lot about wrestling and everything. And when he started everything, everybody in wrestling hated me. So, and Roland was always the exception, and a lot of the guys who came through this area, they were all taught to read my stuff and to respect me, where in the rest of the country, it was like I was like the prime villain in professional wrestling, because I actually, I guess, told the truth. I don't know how you would want to phrase it, but Roland's influence on wrestling, not just here with all of the different promotions and the guys that he trained, but around the country is huge, because without the King of the Indies in 2001, there would be no Ring of Honor. And because the guys who ran Ring of Honor, they watched the tape of King of the Indies and saw how great, Bryan Danielson and Low Key and Christopher Daniels and AJ Styles and some of those guys that came in, Doug Williams, Samoa Joe, that Roland brought in, that Roland scouted and brought in there. And they saw like, oh my God, this wrestling is great. And I remember being at King of the Indies sitting with Red Bastien and Nick Bockwinkel, and they were so proud of seeing how Bryan Danielson and Low Key and those type of guys, what caliber of wrestlers those guys turned out to be. And a lot of them, AJ Styles, hey, he's the best wrestler in the country right now. He was in that tournament. And Bryan Danielson was one of the best wrestlers of the era. And so anyway, you take Ring of Honor out of the picture, and the entire landscape of professional wrestling in North America completely changes. And so, I think everybody should give Roland a big hand, because he was ahead of his time. So, for me, I have been extremely fortunate, I don't know if it's timing, work, whatever, to be able to do this for, I started writing about wrestling in 1971, so it's 46 years now, coming on 47 years. And it doesn't feel that long, but it really is. And I can remember stuff, going all over the world and all that, going to Japan and going to Mexico, and different experiences, going all over the country. And it's been really wonderful. It's been a wonderful period. I love doing the newsletter. I love doing the podcast. For those of you who subscribe, I thank you very much. You've made it all worthwhile. Without the readers, without the subscribers, there couldn't be any me, and I would be long gone from this industry. And I'm not long gone, and I'm not going anywhere. So thank you guys very much. I really appreciate it. I appreciate this honor very much, and thank you.
Please welcome back with the awards, Mr. Rick Luxury and Mr. Bobby Hartz.
I guess they say third time's a charm, huh? All righty. The next award goes to, this is a new award, by the way. The next award goes to the NorCal Manager of the Year. Northern California has had an outburst of managers as of late. This past year, we went through 12 managers now that manage talent out at every promotion and shows. And this award goes to the one that we feel the most fitting to be the Manager of the Year, Manager of Champions for over 1,000 days and counting, and counting, and counting. Ladies and gentlemen, Lucian Delight.
Thank you. Man, I didn't even know this was an award, so I definitely appreciate that. Manager there is now an award. There's a lot of talented managers out there, including Donovan Troy, Caesar Black, Matthew Thiel, the list goes on and on and on. For me to be up here is pretty surreal. I'm very, very appreciative, first and foremost, to my clients. I'd be nothing of a manager without people like Rick Luxury, Boyce LeGrande, Classic Connection, Daniel Torch, Virgil Flynn, all the people who I've been fortunate enough to manage. I'm very thankful to people like Marcus Mack, who've set a good example for me. I wouldn't be anything without Marcus Mack and all the great managers that have come before me. But yeah, I just thank everybody for giving me a chance and for liking what I do. I appreciate being able to live out my passion, and I'm very thankful. So thanks, everybody. I really appreciate it.
We're going to try this one again. We're testing mic one. Mic one, are we testing? Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our last inductor, a man that has paved the way, who has trained the superstars of today and tomorrow, a loving father, a loving individual, one of my favorite Hall of Famers. He is the Brown Bomber. He is Robert Thompson.
Justice League? Is Die Hard really a Christmas movie? No, no. Is the earth flat? And how in the world is get into the Hall of Fame? Let's focus on the question of points in the Hall of Fame. These are the reasons why I think he should be in. He's been undefeated as the Dynamite champion for the last years. He was a part of the greatest tag team ever as a players. Maybe it's the way that he balanced his wrestling schedule, forming his duty as father and husband. Now, a lot of people say they do the same thing, but Boyce has 6 beautiful kids. Or is it his strong values that he brings to everyone, not only as a wrestler, but as a man? I think these are the reasons why he's being inducted into the Hall of Fame. I remember specifically, Roland Alexander and Gabriel Ramirez pulled me aside and said, look, we got this kid. We want to tag you guys up. I want you to mold him. I want you to make him a wrestler. I want you to do whatever you think he needs to become one of the greats. Of course, I was already great at that time, so I said, no problem. I'll give him the rub, and he'll become one of the greats. I never thought that I would have the pleasure of tagging with a guy like Boyce LeGrande. Our first match was January 22nd, 2000, at Lompoc, California. Y2 Chaos, it was called. And when we had that match, I started to realize I don't need to have my greatness rub off on this guy. He's already there. He's already there. They wanted me to be the Shawn Michaels to his Marty Jannetty. Okay. You know, and it wasn't that at all. Me and Boyce, we molded together, we shined together. It was a pleasure tagging with this guy. I would never have a partner as great as him, and I know he thinks the same of me. As a tag team, as the West Side Players, there was no room for 2 egos in that tag team. I thank you for letting me be the only ego on that tag team. He was the power. I was the power. He was the high flyer. He was the voice. I was the face. We were unstoppable. West Side Players, the original West Side Players. Tony Shooter Jones is in the back right now. And he keeps saying, oh, you guys copied us. We were the originals. We were the greatest. We were before you. Granted, you were. But Boyce LeGrande, Bad Boy, and Robert Thompson, the Brown Bomber, we made it cool to be a player. So let's hear it for the true professional in and out of the ring. I would like to induct my brother, my friend, Boyce LeGrande, to the Hall of Fame.
Love you too.
I know I usually don't hold it like this, but my wife is out there, and I always hear it when I'm holding it the correct way. So this time I'll hold it the wrong way. All right, man. I'd just like to thank everybody for coming out tonight. First off, Mr. Thompson back there told you some story about him, Roland, and Gabe getting together and wanting to mold me and shape me on our run as the West Side Players. I'm going to tell you the true story how that came about real quick. See, when I was coming along, Robert was nearing the end of his career. He was in San Jose somewhere, sitting in his lounge chair, contemplating retirement. And I made a call. I said, hey, Rob, I got an idea. Let's form this tag team, and we could go on this great run. He said, I don't know. I'm tired. I said, come on, let's go. We can do it. Just trust me. Just hop on my back and I'll carry you. And he was like, okay, only if you promise you'll carry me. I said, I promise. I got you. So he hopped on my back, and we had a great run as West Side Players 2000. And since I rejuvenated his career, you're welcome. See, there's always two sides to a story. My side and his side, and somewhere in the middle is the truth. So you guys have to figure out the truth. You know, never did I ever think anything like this would ever happen to myself, or anything like this was even possible. You know, for me, growing up in Vallejo, California, watching wrestling with my grandfather, you know, back in the days, we used to have our debates. I used to tell him, Papa, this is real. I want to do this. Look at it. He was like, no, it's fake. And I was like, no, it's real. He was, no, it's fake. We used to go back and forth, real, fake, real, fake. And, you know, I'd asked my grandmother one time, I said, hey, what would you say if I told you I wanted to be a wrestler? Now, mind you, I'm only about 8 years old at the time, and her exact words were to me, and I quote, I would tell you to do something else. End quote. Whew. Nevertheless, that didn't stop me. I mean, at the time, you know, I was still a kid watching wrestling. I never let that deter me. I continued to watch it, but, you know, I really didn't know how to get into it. You know, so I was still playing baseball and football and things of that nature. And, you know, growing up, you know, coming to find out that back then, you know, pro wrestling was really kind of a secret society. You know, you had to know somebody to get into the business, you know. And I never thought that I would actually be able to get in. So it was like one of those things that I, you know, just put in the back of my mind. Well, in 1996, all of that changed. All of that changed for me. I heard about a wrestling promotion, APW. They were having a wrestling show in Cupertino at the high school. So I jumped in the car, went down to Cupertino, checked it out, had a great time. You know, that's where I first saw people like Michael Modest, Robert Thompson, Mike Diamond, Tony Jones, you know, Leprechaun, Aaron O'Grady, you know, saw all these guys that were bigger than life. No, it wasn't the WWF, WWE, WCW, NWA, no. But what it was it was pro wrestling. And you were close, up close and personal with the action, like all of you are right now. You didn't have to pay the hundreds of dollars to sit in the front seat, you know, to get up close and personal. And it was great. And it was great. I loved it. But still, I didn't know anybody. So they advertised for a show, Gym Wars, the following week. So I said, okay, I'm gonna go check that out. Went to Gym Wars, little place in Hayward, California, small little garage. You would never think that any pro wrestling happens there. So we pull up, we walk in, first thing I see is, whoa, this place is small. Not even as big as the gold mine here. Yet, there was a full-size wrestling ring right inside, and there were seats pretty much up, all the way up to the ringside. And I was like, whoa, okay, we're gonna see some good wrestling then. We're up close. Had a great show. I watched the great show, loved it, enjoyed it, and there was an announcement made. If you want to be a pro wrestler, come join APW Boot Camp, and you too can be inside this ring. And from that point on, I said, this is a school? I said, I'm in. Sign me up. And man, pretty much from that point forward, it was history. One thing that I did wanted to show was from that night, I don't know if anybody can see this, from that night, I was chosen as the ultimate gym warrior. My first show, and I actually got to get in the wrestling ring and take a picture with a pro wrestler, anyone that I wanted. And who did I choose? Robert Thompson. It's funny how fate has a way of dealing these things to you. So, Gym Wars, that's where I met Roland Alexander. Man, Roland was full of information. That's where I learned everything, you know, being in this ring. Having my trainer, Michael Modest. Robert was there too. In the end, I wound up training him more than he trained me. And I met a whole host of great guys, you know, from the Mike Diamonds, the Michael Modest, Donovan Morgan, Jardy Friends, Chicano Flames, Tony Jones, everybody that I've come in contact with back then, Boom Boom Kamini. I mean, it's been just a whole host of guys that, you know, helped me and paved the way, you know, for me, for us, and for those that are coming up now. And I just like to thank, there's so many people, you know, that I would like to thank. And first, I'd like to just thank God for blessing me with the ability to do this for so long, saving me from any serious injuries in this ring, because I used to do some crazy things in here, and at any moment, that could have been it. But I was taught in a way to where, you know, I always keep myself protected, you know, so then I can have this long career. Also, I'd like to give a special thanks to the Godfather himself, Roland Alexander, for opening the doors to me and to so many others, those who didn't think that they had the size or even the look to become a professional wrestler, to giving all of us the opportunity to live our dream inside the squared circle. So for that, thank you, Roland. Because truly without him, there probably wouldn't be a lot of us here today. I'd like to thank my mother, Myra Hicks, for being by my side from the beginning. I remember she was being so supportive. I remember she came to one of my matches. It was her first time coming. I was in a battle royal, and me being the new guy, take a lot of punishment. And she was wanting to jump in the ring and get them off me. But she made it through that, and then she actually became good friends with one of the wrestlers who we used to tangle with quite a bit. So thank you. Love you too. I'd like to thank my wife, Boyce LeGrande. One other thing, I totally forgot this. Thank you.
Delicious snackies and drinkies. We'll be back with live pro wrestling in about 15 or 20 minutes. We'll see you then. Head stop by the Superstar table, get yourself some merchies also.